Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-A Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff, Eric, and Drew with you here on Football Eve. It is finally here, gentlemen. Football is upon us. We are, if you're listening to this on Thursday, we are mere hours, perhaps even minutes away from UCF's opener of the 2021 season, Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. on ESPN against the Boise State Broncos, a game that we have been anticipating for quite some time now between, I guess we can say this, the two most prominent non-automatic qualifying teams in all of college football over the last 20 years. And they are facing each other for the very first time in the bounce house. It will be a full bounce house on Thursday night for ESPN. First time since 2019 that we've had a full crowd. Drew, Eric, the anticipation can finally wear down. We are finally here. It is happening. Are you excited, gentlemen?
Is that a rhetorical question?
Thanks for letting that dropping that dead fish in the middle of the linoleum of the kitchen floor.
I'm just glad we don't have to talk about realignment or nonsense about who's playing where or 2-for-1s. I mean, we're actually going to talk about what's going on the field, what's going to happen on the field. What a concept. A crazy concept, I tell you.
Yeah, now we get to talk about actual product instead of, thinking about product.
Yes. So we've got that. We've got a full 2 segments of football. We are previewing the game. Second segment, we're going to take your questions that you've been sending to us for our show. And then we will wrap everything up with the first real full weekend of Olympic sports at UCF this past week. Volleyball and soccer getting underway.
I know. I'm going to get to compare one of UCF's Olympic sports to one of Drew's favorite professional sports teams. Big analogy.
Okay. Let's hold on to that but first, let us set the stage, gentlemen. UCF, Boise State, first ever meeting between the teams. Doppler Danny 5000 tells us that it should be muggy, perhaps rainy. I wonder how that's going to play into. By the way,
that is the most accurate weather forecast you will find on any meteorologist anywhere for a UCF football game. Danny, our good weather meteorologist.
Doppler,
Medina, right.
Danny Doppler. How does it go again?
Hashtag Danny Doppler. That's what it's about. We've got, so I'm pulling up all the game info from OddsShark, which is one of our SB Nation partners, of course. This is going to be, let me ask you both. Let's start with just your general feeling about heading into this game right now. Drew, what are you feeling right now? Is it going to be close?
I'm excited.
Are you feeling good about it? Not good about it? What's it about?
I'm feeling pretty good about it. The big question mark is you got 2 teams, brand new coaches, which means brand new philosophy. So there's a lot of unknowns on both sides. So there's the real advantage comes from the home field advantage at that point. And the bounce house is one of the toughest places for an opposing team to play, especially a good opposing team that energizes the fans. You'll be hard pressed to find pound for pound, number for number, a louder place than the 44,000 plus that you'll have, in a full bounce house. And it's going to be really close to full. I mean, I know there's probably going to be some stragglers who don't come or whatever, but I mean, it's going to be really close to full, and it's going to be a raucous crowd.
Yeah, there's a lot of pent up energy from almost 2 full years without having a full capacity home game that we are just waiting to pull the lid off of here. Eric, what do you think?
I don't think anybody knows what to expect because the 2 new coaching staffs, I think this is a game. We had Chris Vanini on in our last show last week. I don't know that the winner gains as much as the loser loses a lot here. Because you look at both teams here, there's new coaching staffs, a lot of momentum about that, but if you drop the first game, you're like, oh, what does this mean moving forward? You still got, for example, Boise's got to still play Oklahoma State in non-conference. UCF's got to play at Louisville in a couple weeks. So there's momentum, but I think it's fascinating in that 2 new staffs that really we don't have a feel for. Nobody, and yet these 2 coaching staffs, the head coaches, Gus Malzahn and the head coach for Boise State, have battled before. A couple years ago.
Andy Avalos, yeah.
Andy Avalos, when he was the defense coordinator at Oregon, and Gus was at Auburn. They have played. Does the fact that Gus has been an experienced head coach, whereas Avalos has not, does that give UCF an advantage? I think it does. But there's a lot of uncertainty because both teams have their own new systems. How do the players adjust to it? There's obviously been gamesmanship because both teams decided to hold the depth charts out until Wednesday, which is whatever. And we got questions about both of these teams. I think both fan bases have questions about their teams going into this game.
Well, unless you're a top team, you're going to have questions. And UCF did not end 2020 on a good note. And it definitely raised a lot of questions. But you know what? Look at it this way. From a UCF standpoint, last year's detriment was this year's benefit. You have a lot more experience than the 2 deep makes you think there is. And you see a lot of sophomores on there, but they've played. These are a lot of guys who played. So while it may look like a questionable roster in some spots, I actually feel a lot more confident going into this game than I probably should have or should be. But, you look at the 2 deep that just came out and you can't help but feel a little good about it. I feel good about this.
We'll take a look at that in just a second. So a few nuggets that I want to pass along to everyone about Boise State. Since joining the Mountain West 10 years ago, they are 15-0 in non-conference games against schools from Group of 5 conferences. This will be just the 3rd time Boise State has played against an opponent in the American. The previous 2 times was UConn when they were part of the league. The only time that they are 8-1 all time against schools that currently comprise the AAC, but they played them all at a time when they weren't in the American. 6-0 against Tulsa, 2-0 against SMU. Their only loss was to East Carolina in the 2007 Hawaii Bowl. Boise State has won 6 consecutive season openers, 3 of which on the road. Last season opening loss for them came in 2014 against Ole Miss in the Chick-fil-A kickoff game in Atlanta. Coincidentally, that's the last time they lost on a Thursday night. So, wow, we have got a team that knows how to start the season well. Granted, like you said, Eric, new head coach, new leadership.
That's the problem, right? That's the thing. It's a new staff that wasn't a part of that.
Right. One guy who is going to be there though, Hank Bachmeier, who in 5 games last year, 61%, 1,150 yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. This is after he kind of set the Mountain West on fire the year before in 2019. Eric, you remember well the game that he had against Florida State. Where
that was his coming out party,
right? His coming out party. True freshman coming in against Florida State, and doing what he did not flinch, led them to a comeback victory in the second half against Tallahassee or in Tallahassee that year. I'm pulling up his stats for that season: 62%, 9 touchdowns, 6 interceptions in 8 games. 1,879 yards in 8 games. Now he ended up sitting the rest of the season because I believe he got hurt that year, but he's back. He's the starting quarterback. This is a matchup we've been looking forward to since they announced this game in 2019.
It is, he had injuries last year. Boise State had a bunch of injuries, especially at the quarterback position. That's kind of why their season went south. They had some COVID issues. Hey, they had COVID issues this offseason as well.
Right.
The interesting thing is, you're right, though. Bachmeier's been in that setting. He was at Doak Campbell. They beat Florida State. They've got a talented core, as I mentioned on the Black and Gold Banner. We did a roundtable. Two guys to keep in mind, Khalil Shakir, their wide receiver. In my opinion, he's the best wide receiver on the field in this game. And I know that some people are going to, the UCF guys, while they're talented, not as proven as a Khalil Shakir is. C.T. Thomas, big play guy. I think one of the key matchups in this match is UCF's defensive line. We've heard all fall, this is the strength of the defense. They need to show up here. Because to me, Boise State's a type of team. The reason they've been very good in these road games is they have good line play. They've usually been able to run the ball. They've always had great backs, but they've always been able to play physical. UCF has to stand up to them. If they don't put pressure on Bachmeier, I think they could make some big plays against the UCF secondary. We still don't know how good they're going to be, especially with the losses of a Richie Grant type. And I think Boise's going to try to expose some of the linebackers. Now, obviously, UCF have a different scheme defensively to offset some of that. But yeah, I think Bachmeier is very talented when he's healthy, and he's got talented core in the receivers. I think they're going to be good offensively, and I think it will be a challenge. And we're going to learn a lot about this UCF defense, about how much it's grown and improved, or how much are they still in the learning process.
They do return their leading rusher from last year, Andrew Van Buren, although in their depth chart, he's listed as the backup, believe it or not, behind George Holani. So that's going to be something that obviously we want to keep an eye on. As far as UCF is concerned, here are the latest trends on UCF. Even though UCF is just 2-7 against the number in their last 9 games, they're 12-5 straight up in their last 17, and 18-2 straight up in the last 20 games at home. This is according to OddsShark. So one thing though that we got to watch out for, again, new coach, so it's going to be, the trends are going to be different, but UCF is 1-6 against the number in their last 7 games when playing as a favorite. UCF in this game is a 5.5 point favorite, according to OddsShark. Over under is at 68, and 56% of the money is on the over. 2/3 of the money is on UCF minus 5.5. That line went up 2 points from 3.5. And the over-under also, let's see, it opened at 71.5 and it's since gone down. So that gives you some information on that. But with the weather, the wind is going to be 8 miles an hour. It's going to be very muggy, 71%. Isolated thunderstorms in the forecast. But it's going to be a hot night in Orlando with all those people in that stadium, and possibly, some rain early in the day may come through. Is it going to be soggy out there? Not 100% sure, although the field actually is very good at drainage. I do know that from personal experience, having worked down there. It does drain well. It's, there, a lot of these factors just kind of line up. It's just, when was the last time that we had a game this big at home to start a season? Usually I'm used to, a road game or a home game against an FCS opponent like Bethune, who we got next week. But this is big right off the bat. And do you think that there's pressure in this game because of the opponent? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, because here's why. On the field, no. I don't think the season's over if UCF loses this game. Okay, so let me just paraphrase that. That being said, you have so much momentum from Gus taking over, the fanfare, the offseason, and all that. You lose this game at home against Boise State, which has been the program you've been compared to, the program you believe you're better than. You lose to that program.
That UCF, to some extent, has patterned itself after in terms of success.
Correct. You lose to that team, people will turn on the coaching staff, number one, and people will say, wait a minute, what's wrong? It's a deflator. From a momentum standpoint. Doesn't mean you can't pick it up. Doesn't mean that the sky's falling. Doesn't mean anybody should be fired. But you're looking at it from a UCF standpoint. If you can't win your home game here against Boise State, you still got to go to Louisville. You still got to go to Navy. You got to go to Cincinnati. You got to go to SMU. It's going to be a transitional year, and some of our fan base and our listeners don't handle that very well. So I do think there's pressure, especially when you're at home. You're at home. You mentioned the crowd, the
National
atmosphere.
TV.
But I got to tell you something. If you think Boise's going to be fazed by any of that, I think that's the wrong program to think you're going to bully here, because the reason why, and I know UCF fans don't like that Boise gets the benefit of the doubt from the media compared to UCF. The reason Boise gets the benefit of the doubt, marquee non-conference wins. Wins at Georgia, wins at Virginia Tech, wins against Oregon, a win against Florida State. I know they were bad, but it's Florida State. I think the bigger question here, Jeffrey, this to me might be UCF's biggest non-conference regular season win since when? Fill in the blank, boys.
Are you talking about your season opener or in general?
In general. Just give me any general. Because that's to me, because UCF, from a bowl game standpoint, I would argue, has had better resume wins than Boise State has in bowl games. But
I don't count
non-conference wise,
because one, you don't have control of who you play, and
I agree.
Those are bowl games are really just exhibition games outside of a few. But for the most part, you have to look at regular season games a little bit different. I would actually say Penn State 2013 would probably be the biggest.
That's a good one.
Probably be it.
I like it. I agree. At Happy Valley, 100,000+. I mean, Jerry O'Neal, when he was doing sideline, told me it's the loudest place he's ever been as a sideline reporter. That's a great point. That's a great pick, Drew. So, but that's a drought. That's a while ago. Well, that was that was a Bill O'Brien led Penn State team back then.
You have BYU in 2014, but if you look at the non-conference schedule since then, it's been kind of crickets. I mean, North Carolina has been like snake bitten. You can never seem to play them. Georgia Tech was having a down year the one time UCF finally got on the field with them. Watch out for next year's squad though. That quarterback running back duo is going to be nasty. But I mean, other than that, it's largely been crickets. I mean, they just haven't had much really to write home on the out of conference schedule. So yeah, I still go with Penn State 2013. They're you win in Big Ten country, right? That says a lot.
And that's why I think this is a big pressure on UCF. This is a great opportunity. Prime nationally televised game, ESPN, Gus debut. This is an opportunity to kind of scratch that and say this is our big marquee non-conference win. I do think this is a big factor from the Mountain West and the American standpoint, from a reputation standpoint, from a standpoint of, hey, who gets the benefit of the doubt at the end of the day, New Year's 6? They're going to look at this game as part of the equation, especially if whoever wins this game. So I do think the pressure is on UCF to win this game for those reasons I've just addressed.
Well, to add on to it, it's a home game. That puts the pressure even
Absolutely.
higher. You have that home field advantage. You're expected to win. The point spread is the way it is for reason. You can always take 3 points in the spread and attribute that to your home field advantage. So the truth is, if it's 6.5, the real spread is 3.5. So you can always subtract 3 from the home side, and that's your real spread. But I mean, the fact that it's a home game, you have two teams that are receiving votes in the top 25 polls. So that means people are paying attention. And before conference schools start cannibalizing each other, if you want to be the best, you have to beat the best. And, you want to set yourself up as the top group of 5. Well, Boise State has been the other, the non-conference outside of the American top dog. So you want to be the best, knock them down.
They've done it for 2 decades. And look, like I said, we're going to do a post-game show. Drew, you did the post-game show with me last year. We're going to be doing the post-game show once again, night shift after the game. The tone will be dictated by the result, obviously. If they win the game, I think everybody's going to feel out coming out of that stadium and watching like, man, what a game, what a great win. We could go undefeated. We could go to New Year's 6. If they lose, people are going to be like, oh, boy, is this going to be a what kind of year is this going to be when we have all those games still ahead of us? So I think, we tend to and we're going to, and I agree. Okay, it is an overreaction either way. I agree. But that's college sports fan to be in general, and that's what this game is going to bring.
I mean, fan is short for fanatic. So I mean that's just sports for you. It brings out the passion. Passion is a double-edged sword. The opposite of love isn't hate; it's apathy. So I mean, people have a lot of passion for their teams, and they're gonna be happy and elated or sad and angry. But it's still major feelings.
A couple notes that may dovetail into some of those feelings, Drew. This is UCF's a win would be UCF's sixth consecutive win in a season opener. It would also, by the way, Gus Malzahn is a perfect 9-0 in home openers as a head coach. He can get 10 tomorrow. And then also UCF's next win would be all-time win number 175 for UCF football.
Milestone.
So a little bit of a milestone there. Yeah. So yeah, this is going to be pretty. I want to dive into, before we take a break, let's dive into the news from today, which is the depth chart finally coming out for UCF. Obviously, no surprise who's starting at quarterback. But
stop the press.
But a few little tidbits here and there that I think were pretty interesting. Mikey Keene is officially listed as the backup quarterback. Isaiah Bowser is listed as the starting tailback. Behind him are either Richardson or Mark Anthony Richards. Wide receiver core, Brandon Johnson and Jalen Robinson and Ryan O'Keefe are listed as the starters. Behind each of them, Nate Craig Myers, Johnson, Caden Robinson, Titus Mokiao Atamalala, and Amari Johnson. A couple of other interesting notes that, Drew, you pointed out in your column that was up on Black Gold Banneret today. Place kicker, Riker Casey or Daniel Obarski.
That's never good when you have an or next to your kicker position.
Well, I think we're gonna find out one way or the other real quick. There are a couple of other ors in the starting lineup on defense. You got three seniors up in the front four, but in the linebacker position, you've got Tatum Bethune or Eric Gilliard. And then in the secondary, you have either Corey Thornton or Mark Adomio at corner. And then one of the safety positions is either Quadric Bullard or Derek Gaines. Drew, anything we can glean from this in terms of what Gus Malzahn is trying to show here in terms of his cards with the depth chart?
Well, I mean, if you look at the defensive side, you're going to see a couple of flex positions, the buck position and the knight position. And if you read the article, traditionally the buck is a backside linebacker or a weak side linebacker, which is, away from the tight end. So he's
like a designated pass rusher then.
Pretty much. But if you look at the guys who are listed there, Big Cat Bryant and then Landon Woodson, both are actually undersized for the defensive line. They're both tall. Big Cat's the smaller one at 6'5", but he's also Landon Woodson is 235 pounds. Big Cat is 245 pounds. That's actually small for a defensive line. You look at the rest of that 2 deep, 290, 205,
310 and 290. Yeah.
I mean, you got some beef on the defensive line. So this is actually going to afford some flexibility. They can line up as a four down and be as part of the edge, or they can drop back and you have basically what becomes more like a 3-4 defense. And by utilizing the knight position, which is Bryson Armstrong as the starter, and he's been, he's got massive amount of FCS accolades. But what I found interesting is the guy behind him, Devontae Dawson, is actually a defensive back. Mm-hmm. So the knight position may also be a flex between linebacker and defensive back.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it seems to be like a buck is kind of like you can be either a pass rush defensive end or an outside linebacker, kind of like a Lawrence Taylor kind of thing. And the knight position feels like you could be almost like a strong safety where you're playing close to the line, like a linebacker in run support, but you will drop.
Think of it like Aaron Robinson, who played kind of a flex position in himself. I mean,
right.
that
or
was
Ronnie
hard.
Lott for you old school guys.
Well,
right?
I was thinking more UCF centric, but I mean,
okay, fine.
But Aaron Robinson, granted he was listed as a defensive back, he essentially was playing like a third linebacker. He was very flexible. So now they've actually created, so you can create a 4-3 out of this. You can create a 3-4 out of this. You can create a nickel defense with 5 defensive backs and 2 linebackers. So a 4-2-5. You can do a 3-3-5. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility with these 2 flex positions that you can move them all over between, the buck between the defensive front line and the linebackers, and then the night between the linebackers and the defensive backs. So that gives a lot of flexibility without having to change much personnel. And that makes it that much harder to plan for. It was pretty cut and dry what UCF was running under Randy Shannon. They're running a nickel defense, 4 down linemen, 2 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. Here, you don't know what they're going to run. And I think that's really part of the chess match of football.
You know what I like going back and looking at it? Look at that offensive line. I got 3 redshirt seniors. I got a true junior, and I got a redshirt sophomore in Matt Lee, who was an all-conference performer last year.
Oh, yeah. The offensive line is definitely the most stable line going from last year to this year. Nothing's changed on it. The guys who are up front are the guys who expected to be up front. And outside of backup center, which is going to be Mike Lofton, everyone else is pretty much where we thought they were going to be. This is a very stable unit. On the flip side, it's the most senior laden unit. 5 out of the 10 are seniors. So you're going to have some attrition next year more than anywhere else on the field. So you're going to probably see some young guys sneak in some playing time, especially, while trying to keep red shirts, because you can play 4 games and still maintain red shirts. So if any blowout starts happening, that line is probably going to be shifted out quicker than most other units.
All right. Well, we got a full preview coming tomorrow morning. We've also got our round table that's up. We've got a ton of preview material that, Drew, you have worked extraordinarily hard on breaking down every position. And in addition, we also did a sort of round table, 5 biggest questions leading into this season for UCF. So there's literally no excuse for you not to be prepared in terms of knowledge when you step into the bounce house for the 7:00 kickoff between Boise State and UCF on ESPN. And Eric, who do we have calling the game on ESPN?
We have Matt Berry, the new Thursday night team, by the way, for ESPN. This is the new team, because when this first came out, we were all kind of thrown off a little bit. So Matt Berry will be the voice for these Thursday night games alongside, Roddy Jones and Harry Lyles Jr. will be the sideline reporters. So it's a brand new broadcast team. They're going to be the Thursday night team. I was a little caught off guard by it myself. Don't know what to tell you. I mean, Roddy Jones, I think people has done UCF games in the past, working with different people. So I think they're fine. Matt Berry, that's an interesting move. He did some games last year with Mike Golick Jr. I don't know if they will be in the stadium or if they will be on remote. We'll find out when obviously the game starts airing, but interesting broadcast team. I don't really have, I don't know how this will go, but you also remember, folks, you also have the radio version with Mark Daniels, Gary Paris, Scotty Adams and company on the radio side. So if you don't like what you hear, just tune into the radio and figure out the audio deal. And if you like it, then but the most important thing, just remember, after the game, go to our YouTube page. We'll be live, myself and Jeremy Brenner. We want interaction. Drew might pop in during home games. That's going to be different. When Brian did this on the post-game shows, we waited till he got to his car. But he lived in the same neighborhood in town than the stadium is. Drew has a lot of mileage he has to drive, so I don't, we will try to be very conscious of that, Drew.
Don't worry about the miles. The miles will worry about themselves.
You got Bluetooth in the car, right, Drew? I think you're fine on that.
Yeah, don't worry about the miles. But remember, for those who are at the stadium, you can listen to the PA guy, Jeff Sharon.
Yeah,
I've heard of him.
I mean, he's okay. He's okay.
I will say this. I thought I was nervous heading into my very first game last year with Tulsa. 10,000 people in the stands. And I have a video of myself introducing the game. You can see my hands shaking as I'm holding my script. I am super nervous for this game because it's a full house, prime time, everything.
It's a big game. It's a fun game.
This is a big game. This is as big as it gets. And listen, all of you are like, what do you mean you're nervous? I'm always nervous. You
Jeff,
guys have listen to this podcast. You know how nervous I get about every UCF game. Like,
Jeff, I have a recommendation for you. Don't suck.
Okay, great. Thanks. This is why I keep you on board. Appreciate that. You know what doesn't suck? The questions that we've been getting from our listeners on Twitter. UCF_Banneret on Twitter. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we will answer your questions. Coming up next, this is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Drew Glukov, Eric Lopez with you on Football Eve here. UCF Boise State, 7 p.m. On Thursday, September the 2nd, getting ready for the game. Late roster news from UCF. Tremon Morris-Brash not listed in the 2 deep. And the news is not good, Drew.
It's not. Was arrested Saturday for a DUI. Blew a .165, which is more than double the legal limit of .08. That's not good. UCF and head coach Gus Malzahn did have an official statement basically saying, we're taking care of it.
All right.
That can mean anything.
That could mean anything. It is as ominous as it is vague, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and Drew, my question to you on this: what does that mean now, moving forward for the defensive line from whenever? I mean, it's another body you lose at least. The impact of this on the field is what?
Well, I mean, he's supposed to be a starting defensive end. I mean, he was supposed to be one of those main guys, and now he's not there. Granted, UCF's defensive line is absolutely stacked with the transfers that they brought in: Ricky Barber, Big Cat Bryant. So if there's any year that one of your starters does something not very smart and gets in trouble for, this is the year you want one guy to do it, because you can actually get by with one guy out. But I mean, you don't want to lose anyone.
Drew.
I would say you don't want to lose anyone. We'll see what comes of this. Could be a suspension. I mean, I haven't heard anything about dismissal yet. They haven't gone.
Yeah, we can't even speculate about that.
No,
Whatever Coach Malzahn and his staff decide to do, they're deciding that right now, and they're keeping it their hand and within house. We'll know about it at some point.
Yeah, my guess is we'll probably get some sort of resolution by next week. Right now, it's about Boise State, and so you're not going to worry about this, other than the fact of you're not playing.
Yeah,
and I wouldn't want him playing at this point, because that's a major oops. There has to be accountability, and you. Well,
right. I agree.
Before before you start the season on your first game and something like that, you have to draw the line. You have to set a standard. You don't want the roster to get away from you before you ever take the field for a real game. So this decision is really important. It's really huge, and it sets the stage for discipline throughout potentially the rest of his tenure.
Go ahead, Eric. You were going to say?
No, I agree. And look, they're going to take care of it. And the good news is, as you mentioned, they have depth. The concerning thing, and I've said this in past episodes, you don't want losing players before seasons, games are played. I know people feel good about their depth, but at some point that kind of takes its toll, as we get to playing games and things. But the most important thing of the whole thing is you hope that the young man learns his lesson. I mean, and I think that is important here. I think remember what Gus said since he's been here. It's about the people. It's about learning. I think a life lesson to me, hopefully out of this, a lot more important of whatever contributions he makes on the field. I hope that in the big picture, there's a positive that comes out of this for the young man.
Right. It should be noted as far as football is concerned with this defensive end position, the starters, Anthony Montalvo, redshirt senior. Behind him, Josh Seliscar, who was a star last year.
As I said, if this
that's pretty loaded.
This is probably the most stacked singular position on the team.
Yeah.
As far as depth goes.
All right. So let's get to some questions from you, the listeners who have been sending us questions. And we appreciate all the questions that you've been sending our way. Now, this is from Operator Gus on Twitter. Who's going to have the biggest impact as a transfer? Drew, we'll start with you.
Well, I mean, we mentioned issues on the defensive line. I'm leaning towards Big Cat Bryant. You're voted one of the team captains. Granted, Brandon Johnson was as well, but with a team a squad that was much maligned from last year, you need someone to kind of rise up. And Big Cat has some good accolades coming in, more so than some of the other transfers. I mean, the only other transfer I'd say has as much accolades is Bryson Armstrong, who I'm a big fan of. But then again, I've always been a fan of small school guys. But I think Bryant is really going to set the pace, and with that flex position could really cause some disruption.
I 100% agree. I think he's the most important player because to me, what's been lacking from UCF the last couple of years, what they had in 2017 is a guy in that line that's not going to allow his defensive guys to get pushed around. If you look back at 2017, a guy that was always underappreciated from that defense was Jamarius Pittman. Why? Because him and Tony Garrard made sure that they weren't going to get pushed around by the other team's offensive line. Since then, that hasn't been necessarily the case. And I think Big Cat is the guy, to me, that is going to be the guy that tells me, hey, this guy's going to make sure this defensive line doesn't get pushed around. We're going to be the physical ones, not the opponent's offensive line. I think that sets the tone. With so many, when you got still questions in your backside, your secondary linebackers, defensive line's got to set the tone here. I think Big Cat sets the tone. I think he's the most important guy. I think he makes the biggest impact.
I'm going to add on to that is because, you look at Kalia Davis, who's an absolute beast, in the front. But the thing is, Kalia Davis is kind of one of those quiet guys who hits hard, talk quiet, but carry a big stick. Well, you need a guy who's going to also be a voice to rile the troops, to bring them together. And I think that's where Bryant's also going to really excel, is on the leadership front. Shaquem Griffin did an outstanding job in that 2017 team of bringing them together, being the spirit, being the voice. And they're going to need someone who rises up to do that. And so far, it looks like Bryant's going to be that guy.
All right. James Reed, Cause Seg Advisor on Twitter. Freshman in the 2 deep. What are we looking for from those guys? Who do you think may stand out the most from any freshmen who are in the 2 deep?
Well, we've got, if I counted correctly, and I should have because I looked at it like 3 different times. We have 3 true freshmen and 1 redshirt freshman in the 2 deep. I think Brandon Adams is going to be a guy who's going to a lot of playing time. You're going to have rotation within the defense, including the defensive backs. There's probably going to be a little bit of attrition from injury, and unlike the wide receivers, there's not quite as much depth in the defensive backs. Brandon Adams set behind Devontae Brown. I think he's got a great opportunity to get on the field for some meaningful playing time.
He's really big too, 6'3", 180.
Oh, he's a big boy, and he's
a
room
big
to grow.
kid, yeah. So I really
agree.
like looking. Go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
I agree. I think that's pivotal. When you're going to play the SMUs and even the Louisvilles and teams, you're going to be probably 3-4 wideout sets. So you're going to have Brandon's going to have to be good because he's going to be a guy that I would not be surprised if certain teams try to target him early on, depending on the matchups.
Yeah. The guys, I still can't wait to see what Titus Mukiawatamala does in the wide receiver set. So we saw the video from earlier this year about him working with DG. They have the 808 connection going on there. I'm interested to see what he can do. He's a real flyer, 6'1", 175. I think that's what's underrated about him is his size, 6'1", 175.
I want to also add that he is currently listed as second on the punt returner list. So there's a possibility of him getting involved there too. Amari Johnson's your starter. A lot of talk about Amari Johnson probably having a chance of being your breakout guy for the year.
Yeah, we know about the speed that Amari brings to the table too. I think that's going to be fun. Let's see. James also asks, where would Ware have played, the defensive back who we just lost for the season?
He would have started, wouldn't he, Drew?
I would imagine he would have been he would be penciled in as a starter. It's hard to find experience in the defensive backfield. You have sophomores, starting. That's not always a good thing. Granted, sometimes it's the best player, but you need leadership. And he was expected to be a leader in the defensive backfield with that experience. And his loss will be sorely missed.
Yeah. Jarvis Ware came over from Mizzou, along with the Knights co-defensive coordinator, David Gibbs, and also the secondary coach. So kind of expected to be a coach on the field in a way. Let's see here. Rolling through some of those other questions. Another one from Operator Gus. Dylan Gabriel's NFL stock. What are we thinking?
He needs a really good year. And let me explain why. And I know it's not fair to kind of, douse him with unfortunate criticism, but because it's not his fault. He's viewed as a system quarterback. And the reason why is because Josh Heupel ran a specific system with very simple play calling. It was basically 3 or 4 plays. There was not much nuance to it.
Not a lot of reads to it.
It really had nothing to it. And that hurts his stock. He needs this year to really prove under a more competent system, a more complicated system, that he's not just a guy with an arm, because he has amazing deep route touch. I remember watching him when he was playing against Florida Atlantic, his first game as a starter. I was down in Boca watching the game, and his deep passes were beautiful, but he had massive happy feet problem on anything short and medium range. And that's what this offense is really going to focus more on. So he's got an opportunity to prove that, hey, I'm not just a guy who heaves it downfield and hopes for the best. He needs a really good year to do that. This is a thin quarterback class. You have,
the kid from North Carolina.
Sorry, I had Spencer Rattler, Sam Howell, and a basket of French fries. It goes downhill from there. I mean,
I like Sam Howell. In fact,
Sam Howell's good.
I do. In fact,
that's it. There's a major drop off after.
Malik Willis is a poor man's Lamar Jackson. It's very similar style of play. Doesn't necessarily translate. It can be hit or miss in the NFL. Desmond Ridder is not really an NFL quarterback.
Well, we don't know that. In fairness, I mean, I can tell you, I was listening to Ryan Russillo's podcast, Stanford Steve, who's on with Scott Van Pelt, and I've also heard Curb Herbstreit say the word on the street is that they believe that Desmond Ridder has taken that next step this offseason, which is the passing game. That's the code word for, can you throw the football, young man?
Yeah,
Everybody
we'll
knows.
Have to see it.
Right, we have to see it. Agreed. But if he does, that changes the equation. And there's always that guy that comes out of nowhere in these draft classes that gets drafted super high. They're like, wow, I didn't think of that. Like Joe Burrow, people forget. Joe Burrow was not a number 1 overall pick until he literally got knocked out by UCF, which we don't need to address in the Fiesta Bowl. It's a bad memory. But nobody thought of him as an NFL draft number 1 pick at all until during the season played out for LSU. Blake Bortles. Nobody was thinking about him being a first-round draft pick, let alone a top 3 pick, until literally Todd McShay was in town for that UCF South Carolina game. I'll never forget it. I was hosting a radio show in the morning at the time, and I had Dave Pash on, who was calling the game for ABC, and he said, Brian Greasy at the time, who was his analyst, and McShay, they're all looking at Blake Bortles. His stock is up. So there's always room for a guy to raise up. And I think it could be either Dylan or Desmond. It could be either or.
One thing about Desmond too, he's got 36 career games under his belt. But you know how many times he's thrown for 300 yards or more?
1, 2,
4.
for.
Right. Now, in fairness to them, with Luke Fickell, they're a run the football. They're not going to be a spread out, throw it 40 times a game. But he does have to.
But that's the knock on him, is that he's
right.
just a runner.
But that's the thing. It's the same. It's this, an inverse problem that Dylan Gabriel has. You're stuck with a specific system. He has not had a chance to really show what he can do. And if you look at his numbers, his completion percentage is not anything spectacular. So, you're throwing the ball less, but you're also completing less.
Yeah.
He's going to need a strong year, just like Dylan Gabriel is. Like if Dylan Gabriel went in the draft in 2020, I thought maybe a 6th round pick. He's got work to do, and Desmond Ridder does too. Ridder's got the benefit of a team that has done really well, which tends to boost your stock.
May very well be that game between these two teams ends up really deciding who the top dog is here between them.
Well, SMU may have something to say about that.
I agree with that. But by the way, Dylan Gabriel has played in 23 career games. You know how many times he's thrown for 300 yards or more?
It's a very long list.
It's 11 of the 23 games.
But again, different style. And how many of those, though, are in marquee opponents that open your eyes? Jeff, you and I were there. I think you were there for the Stanford UCF game. That was the game a couple of years ago where Gabe Davis announced himself to the NFL. That was the game when he blew past Debo, who's now with the Saints, the defensive back for Stanford, and the other guys. When he dominated that Stanford.
Debo, yeah.
Thank you. When he dominated him and dominated Stanford, that's when all the NFL people was like, did you see this guy? That was there's always, and it could be, this Boise game could be that for Dylan. It could be that, or it could be the Cincinnati game, or it could be the Louisville game. One thing we do know from a Dylan standpoint, he will have the opportunities from a national television standpoint to get his name out there and prove his stock. If he has these marquee games, that's when the kind of the publicity begins.
By the way, Dylan's stats in that Stanford game. Sorry to interrupt, Drew, but okay. Dylan's stats in that Stanford game, by the way, to a 33, 47, 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, he was nearly flawless.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he's on the radar. He's not hiding. They know who Dylan Gabriel is, so they're going to be keeping an eye on him.
Stanford Steve said on the podcast that's his favorite quarterback to watch, and he said that's
it really is a lot of fun to watch. Yeah. He just needs to prove that he's more than just a deep ball.
Right.
And I think this system will prove that one way or the other with
Absolutely.
Gus. Yeah,
I think that's right. But I really am. I know one thing. If he has a monstrous year this year, I don't know, man.
Well, he's gone at that point.
You think so?
I think he's gone either way. And if you guys remember, I've pointed from almost day since the spring game. I already projected Mikey Keene to be your starting quarterback next year.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that either. But I will say this: I do agree with most of it. One thing I will say, with NIL, there's something to be said to be a popular college football player now on your team. You can make some money out of that. Just saying.
Good question here from Citro Knight Apparel. Who on defense do you think will be the breakout guy? Eric, I want to go to you first on this one.
Does it have to be a player? Because I think it's going to be Travis Williams, the defensive coordinator.
I like you thinking outside the box on that answer. Let's go with that.
And now here's why I'll say that, and I'll let Drew take the players. This defense was atrocious last year. And Drew and I spent a ton of time on the postgame show questioning the scheme, questioning Randy Shannon. A lot of the fan base questioned Randy Shannon. Well, he's gone now. And this guy, I think, is legit. I think this guy is a future head coach, kind of like Marcus Freeman at Cincinnati, was the defense coordinator, and now he just got plucked to Notre Dame. I think this guy could be a star. That would not surprise me. If UCF defensively plays well, he's a name that's going to be a hot name in the coaching fraternity. And I think, what can he do with this defense, I think will speak volumes. Yes, they have some talent, but there's still some questions on this roster defensively. We'll see what he comes up with from a scheme standpoint and what he maxes. The players adore him. They speak highly of him. They talk about how they feel they are in position, in good position to make a play, which was not the case in the past. I know it's a cop-out, but I think Travis Willie could be a star name, a big name that people are talking about if UCF has a good year defensively here come as the year plays on.
Drew?
Is it a breakout guy if he's already good and just didn't play for UCF?
Yeah, let's go with it.
Okay, then I'm going with Bryson Armstrong.
Okay.
I love this guy. He is a tackle machine. I'm just an absolute tackle machine. And, if you actually pull up his numbers real quick, and if I can click on it real fast, it's really impressive. I mean, he was second team on the AP All FCS All American team. So, I mean, that's pretty good. He did the same thing in 2019. He's been
Kennesaw State.
Yeah, transfer from Kennesaw. 2-time Big South Conference Defensive Player of the Year in the 19 and the 21 season, which is obviously the relocated 2020 season. Has over 314 tackles in his career at Kennesaw. He has a knack for the ball and just knows how to get there and make tackles. I mean, I'm really stoked to see how this guy fits on an FBS team playing against some good opponents, especially ones that like to run the ball. I'm really, really excited to see him play.
Does Devon Wilson count? Because I would throw his name too.
I think so.
Yeah, he last year was his first year on the team. Transferring from Georgia, got kind of thrown into the wolves a little bit early, and he's been able to kind of rise up from it. That was one of the benefits of having younger players having to step in and play in the defensive backfield, was guys like Devon Williams really growing into his role. I think he's an excellent pick for breakout.
Yeah, I just didn't want to feel like I was cheating the question going with T. Will, so I will give you a bonus with the play.
No, if you were cheating the question, I would have held you to it. All right, I like that. Let's see if we have. What do you think? We have time for one more?
Sure.
All right, let's do a completely silly one. This is also from Operator Gus. Should we change our name to the Citronauts?
No,
stop it.
We do it for one. We have one game a year that's a space game that uses the Citronaut. I'd like to see it, used every so often. Instead of just having a UCF block on the helmet, throw a Citronaut on there. Maybe call it them that for a game, but I mean, don't do more for one game. No, people are still calling us Golden Knights. The last thing we need to do is complicate this even more. All right, they do that to troll.
I don't know if they do that to troll. I think people generally are confused, just like they do the whole. I don't even want to get into the Central Florida thing. By the way, it's okay if we wear black and gold. Just saying, give me some black and gold. Give me some all blackouts when gear. So.
I would love to see, one thing I would like to see is some sort of uniform set where we mix the black and gold with the Canaveral blue and just see how that looks together. Nobody else has that color combination. What if we did that?
I remember when the Cleveland Cavaliers tried to use that with a blend of orange and didn't.
It's the Cavs. Everything they touch turns to crap.
Wow.
This is back in the Fratello days, so they actually played defense back then.
I didn't mind those jerseys. I remember that. Terrell Brandon, yeah.
Bobby Phils. Remember Bobby Phils? The late
Rest
Bobby
in
Phils.
peace.
Yes, but late Bobby Phils. Mark Price.
The original days of Zydrunas Ilgauskas.
Yes. So, all right. Hey, thanks to everyone for sending in the questions. We really appreciate them. If you got more questions after the game, I know you will. Make sure you hop onto our YouTube channel immediately following the football game. Eric, you and Jeremy Brenner will be on board definitely for night shift.
We'll be doing that all year. Obviously, Drew will be at the games, at the home games, but the road games, Drew will be with me and Jeremy as well on the road games. We'll do it after every game. Get your thoughts in the chat room there, as well as you can tweet at us at our Black and Gold and ask your questions. We'll try to address them throughout the show.
All right. We're going to take a quick
break.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Stick around. When we return, more stuff to talk about. We want to talk about soccer and volleyball kicking off a full weekend. We'll preview what they've got coming up this weekend as well, and clean up some loose ends when we return. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. All right, welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. It's Jeff, Drew, and Eric with you as we finish up getting ready for football season. Thursday night, 7 o'clock, UCF against Boise State. One more interesting bit of news from the football side. ESPN Plus, boy, Eric, this is really paying off for UCF, isn't it? They just announced, along with UCF, that they will be airing on ESPN Plus exclusively a documentary series, Our Time, UCF Football, throughout the 2021 season. It premieres September the 9th, exclusively on ESPN Plus. It is, I just want to double check. Okay, it's produced by Bo Mattingly in partnership with executive producers Mike McInnes and JM Associates in conjunction with the American Athletic Conference. They're scheduled for, 7 and 4 is 11, 12 episodes running September 9th through December the 2nd. And the series is going to go behind the scenes with UCF football, right? Inside the meeting rooms, the locker rooms. Players and coaches mic'd up for various segments. Gus Malzahn totally signed on with this. And in the trailer for it, I saw they were talking to him in his car while he's heading into work. It's this is really good. This is Hard Knocks UCF edition, basically. UCF is the third program to do it. The other previous two were both in, interestingly enough, the Big 12 Conference, Oklahoma State and Kansas in 2020 and 2019, respectively. Eric, this is right in your wheelhouse, man.
Yep.
This is pretty cool.
It is. We go back to March at the men's basketball championship game, Mike Oresco held his a Zoom press conference, and one of the things he brought up, and I asked him the question, so I'm going to go ahead and just pat myself on the back on this.
Hey, give yourself the credit,
yeah,
here, Eric.
Because I asked him about the because we don't know. I mean, we have been on top of this ESPN Plus since literally this contract was signed. We had Michael Smith on. It's things like that. And I asked Gus and I asked Mike about ESPN. Could, we see some content, what can we expect from it, expanding there. He had acknowledged one of the things ESPN Plus he expects to do from the American standpoint to see original content, that the schools had the right to do original content and do their own stuff in series. And here's an example right here where UCF, who obviously has been doing some good stuff in the past anyway, they've kind of been giving you glimpses over the last few years with their Netflix stuff. Well, now this is on a bigger stage to do a documentary. You mentioned the previous two, Oklahoma State and Kansas. I've watched those. This is what ESPN Plus, you're going to see, I think, more of this as it moves forward. I think it's cool from a fan base. You're going to see some stuff behind the scenes. It's funny because Hard Knocks obviously has been huge in the NFL. College football has tried to do this. Showtime has done this in years past with Notre Dame and Florida State and Navy. But it's harder because a lot of times college programs just don't want to give access. But to UCF, they've always been pretty good about this behind the scenes. So I think it's a win-win for all parties. Good promotional. And again, ESPN Plus provides you this platform. Do you get this platform if you don't have ESPN Plus? If you're on ESPN, probably not. But you do because it's ESPN Plus and you have more ability. And the beauty is you can watch it whenever you want. So I'm looking forward to seeing this. I think it's a smart move for everybody there. It's a great exposure for the program that you can't put a price on.
I think the other question you got to say is, do you get this? Do you get this kind of thing if you're on Fox or CBS or NBC? No. Maybe NBC.
The Peacock. I think NBC with Peacock, maybe. Fox would be a problem because they don't have a streaming platform right now that you can trust on that. In fact, they've tried to do some documentaries. They've had some mixed results with that. Same thing with the CBS deal. They're obviously got Paramount. Look, streaming's the way to go.
That kind of content over to Showtime, really.
Right. The difference here is, though, with ESPN Plus, this is your home for a lot of right now for all your UCF content, games, broadcast, stuff like that. And I hope that more schools take advantage of this and put out content stuff there, whether it be coaches shows, because a lot of schools put up their coaches press conferences on ESPN Plus, whether it be a behind the scenes show, whether it be Olympic coaches shows. There is a lot of different stuff that you could do with this platform. It's like your own channel. We'll see what happens. I think schools are still kind of figuring things out, but I think that's the future of where this is all headed, one way or the other. And it's cool. It's a great thing to see, and I look forward to seeing it. You better believe it. To be honest, Jeffrey, here, we're going fourth wall here. We may have to assign somebody on the site to write a review of each episode.
I'm in for that. I think that'd be great.
We used to have a guy that would have been perfect for it, but he's off doing baseball, so we won't name him. So
he specifically asked not to be named.
Asked not to be named.
So we won't name him.
We will honor that.
He'll be thou shall not be named.
Yes,
sir, not appearing in this podcast.
Let's move over to soccer. So, kind of a split weekend for the UCF soccer teams. UCF men's soccer. After that 4-0 loss to FIU last Thursday, they came back with a vengeance on Sunday and took it to UNF. 5-0 was the final for the Knights. Luca Dorado had 2 goals. Gino Vivi had 1. Lucas Morrow also had 1. Josiah Ramirez capped off the scoring for UCF. This is despite the fact that UNF had an 8-3 corner kick advantage. UCF was back to their old tricks in terms of shots. 19 shots to UNF's 5. Really an outstanding job all the way around. In goal for UCF, by the way, we're wondering how that would go. Matt Douglas played 19 minutes. Tyler Levine played 71.
Levine started. Yeah.
Levine started. And Douglas came in afterwards. Douglas had 2 saves. Levine had the 1. Only needed to make 3 saves. But that's a big win for UCF coming off of that loss where I think they were really disappointed about how they started the season.
Oh, that's an understatement. That was an understatement.
Yeah,
Scott Calabrese didn't hold back on his presser on that.
Yeah, they needed that one to come back really big, and I think they took out some frustrations on UNF before they head out to the George Tarantini Classic up in where they will play number 10 Virginia Tech and NC State, who's receiving votes Friday at 4 and Monday at 7 p.m. respectively. But that UNF win, I think, was badly needed, especially the way that they did it.
Yeah, I mean, Calabrese said afterwards, after the first opener against FIU, embarrassed, disappointing, unacceptable. Those were his words on the performance. He made some lineup changes as a result. Won a goal as well. Not to say to single out the goalkeeper, but I think watching both teams, here's the thing. Yannick had so many responsibilities with this team beyond just, making the save. Because with this offense, they want the goalkeeper to start the offense. Yannick was a great passer as a goalkeeper. He has so many responsibilities, and the defenders always trusted him. Well, now we don't know who the goalkeeper is going to be. That's ongoing. If you're a defensive player, you don't know who you have behind you. You don't have that trust yet. You don't have that vibe. So sometimes a defensive player tries to do too much, and as a result, you turn the ball over and give up a goal. That's kind of what happened to them in the FIU match. I think they're still sorting all that out in the backside there and getting that down. Who will step in and be the goalkeeper moving forward is still the big question. That has to be settled because then everybody else can settle down. Until then, I think you're going to have kind of people walking in pins and needles. Oh, do I do this? Do I not do this? And I think that's what happened to FIU. They bounced back against UNF, but the challenge is going to get a lot tougher now on the road. And I think they're still trying to figure out that whole vibe. They got to play better defensively. They were not good against the FIU. They lost their poise, too, which I know Coach Calabrese was disappointed in. That's something you don't want to see, and I think you're right. They took out some frustration on UNF. Now we'll see what they look like on the road.
That's such a powerful word, disappointed. Such a powerful word.
Yeah, you're a parent too, aren't you? The big one, I think, is that Virginia Tech game coming up, which is their next one on Friday. Had to get that win before heading into that one with the Hokies. And you're back. The national folks are talking about you.
Correct, but again, 8 corners given up. That's a concern. That's again not being sure how to clear the ball. Trying to do too much sometimes. Also,
less
the other
is
thing,
more.
Right. The other thing is too, and FIU has done this now to them. Being physical with UCF, trying to be physical. They forced some fouls, getting chippy, trying to rough them up a little bit. That's how UCF lost their poise in the second half. That might be something that's kind of they're going to have to get used to because teams tend to be copycats. And if they see you kind of lose your poise against a team that's physical, they're going to try to duplicate that. So keep that in mind too, how they handle being the physical style that the opponent might bring against them.
Yeah. Women's soccer on the other side suffered their first loss of the season, 2-0 against LSU at home earlier in the week. That game took place on Sunday. So after beating Texas at home and Florida on the road, they come back and lose to LSU 2-0. They a bit of a concern from that game because, boy, did Caroline Delisle get peppered with a lot of shots. LSU outshot UCF 16-10, but the shot on goal advantage was 10-2 in favor of the Tigers. And so that seems to be a real concern in terms of the defense for UCF, which performed very admirably in the first two games against Texas and Florida. It did not allow a goal.
No, but LSU's look good, really good. That's a little.
Yeah, they're off to a 4-0 start.
LSU, and I don't mean. I mean, this is the only comparison I can make, so I'm going to apologize in advance. The LSU women's soccer is very eerily similar to what LSU football was when they played UCF, and what I mean by that is LSU last fall women's soccer did not win a single match in the SEC, not one. They went winless. They won a conference tournament game, and then that's it. They played the spring, won 11 out of 13, and one of the things they did was they went more up-tempo offense, and we saw that on Sunday. They are an up-tempo offense, just like football. LSU, remember, Joe Burrow the following year after the UCF game, they go up-tempo, spread it out, he becomes a Heisman Trophy. Same thing here with LSU here. They are now an up-tempo offense. They beat South Florida prior to this match. They have been doing this to everybody since the spring. They are one of the hottest teams in soccer. I think they are a sleeper team in the SEC if they keep this up. This is a team that is dangerous offensively, and I think was too much firepower for UCF. I think UCF, I'm not going to say they weren't prepared for it, but it was a lot to handle. And when you have a team that's constantly putting pressure on you, it's hard to muster an offense, and that's what happened with UCF. Usually a team will sit back and be conservative. That is not the case with LSU, and that's kind of what happened to UCF. They fell behind for the first time, and they just couldn't muster much of an offense because LSU would counter them. Boom, and they were fast. I was really impressed with LSU. Tough loss for UCF, but again, at the end of the day, you're 2-1. You have a wins over Texas and Florida. You actually moved up in the rankings, by the way. Thank you. They actually jumped South Florida, which agitated some of the folks and our friends in Tampa a little bit.
That's a shame.
So respect, but it goes back to the respect that this program has on that. So I'm not gonna like say, oh, that's a big problem there. I'm just gonna tip my cap to LSU on that. I was really, men's soccer, we've talked so much, Jeff, about UCF and up-tempo offense. We don't see that as much in the women's game. LSU basically played the UCF men's soccer style, and I'm very intrigued to see them what to watch. But if UCF 2-1, it's a good start. But now you got to go to the horseshoe.
That's
soccer,
right, Ohio
the
State.
The soccer version. Is that what they call it, Drew, there? The horseshoe in soccer, or is that just for football?
It's just for football.
All right, I tried.
Well, September. This is Thursday. By the way, this is 5:00, right before the football game. UCF women's soccer at Ohio State on Big Ten Network Plus, Columbus, Ohio.
With respect to Ohio State and their fan base in soccer, I don't expect a marquee big crowd for that match. I have a feeling there's another sporting event going on. Drew, can you elaborate? I think there's Ohio State football might also be played. So I have a feeling that a few people might be paying attention to that one.
Probably about as many people paying attention to UCF soccer with a football game. Hey, that's why I'm here. I will give you updates on night shift. I can multitask, all right? They're on the road. See, that's the difference.
Who did that? Like, really? By the way, this is a Big Ten weekend for UCF women's soccer because after the Ohio State game, they come back home Monday and they play Penn State at 6 p.m.
Penn State's very strong, top 10. So, again, look, challenging schedule. Let's see how they grow. We'll see how they handle the road match area up in Columbus. And then, obviously,
you don't have to worry about the weather, right? I mean, that's a good part.
I hope not. Let's hope not. I mean, do we have Danny Doppler to give us an update? No, probably not. We're going to keep her exclusive to football. But so hopefully they can build on that. Hopefully, like I said, we'll see how they do against Ohio State. Penn State's really good. And not to look ahead, but there's a blockbuster one the following week. But we won't get into that.
North Carolina, Sunday, September at 1 p.m. And that's Old Miss sandwiched in between. A road trip out to Oxford. Let's not forget about that one. I know they're not going to. 2-1 to start the season, so we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll definitely be updating you. Follow our Twitter account, UCF_Banneret, for any updates from UCF women's soccer at Ohio State. Volleyball. Opening weekend for the Knights. They go 1-2 with a really tough schedule in the UCF Challenge. They open on Friday night against Georgia Tech. By the way, this is a Georgia Tech team that earlier in the same day faced off against Penn State, ranked number 12 in the country coming in, and beat them in 4. And UCF had Tech on the ropes a couple of times and couldn't pull through. UCF won the first set against Georgia Tech, lost the second 26-24. That's a one-swing difference. Tech won the third in rather easily. And then in the fourth, again, it came down to one swing, and Georgia was able to get it 25-23. So I think UCF, even though they lost that match in 4, had to be pretty pleased with how they came out in that match, and certainly had a chance to, and certainly had to be disappointed though with the way that they didn't get the victory as they felt like they should have. McKenna Melville had 19 kills on 50 swings. That's a lot for her. And interesting, Coach Dagenais running. He usually runs what they call a 6-2, where they have basically 6 hitters and 2 setters, and they rotate 2 at a time, depending on how the rotation goes. Well, he's been running a 5-1 of late, and so far it's been working with Amber Olson as the setter. She had 40 assists in that Georgia Tech match. But then they come back. They had a doubleheader the following day, including a match that yours truly was on the mic for on ESPN, which for ESPN Plus against St. John's. They get the sweep of the Johnnies. And by the way, St. John's is expected to be a big contender in the Big East. The Big East has Creighton and Marquette, and those are usually 2 very powerful volleyball schools. But St. John's is right there. They have the number 1 player in the Big East in Efrozini Alexikou, who the Knights held to just 10 kills and held her under 200. Meanwhile, Melville had 14 kills, and Anne-Marie Watson had a big game, 11 kills, 6 blocks. She was fantastic in that match. So it came down to the nightcap. Russ Rose and Penn State. They 7 national titles, the winningest in the history of volleyball, college women's volleyball. And it looked really good early for UCF as they actually had a set point against Penn State in the first, but couldn't wrap it. Penn State at one point won 4 straight points to finish off the first, 27-25. And then just kind of stiff-armed the Knights late. They did a very good job on McKenna Melville, I should say. They held McKenna, and this is what Penn State does, to just 11 kills on 39 swings, which is 0.77. She had 8 errors, which is extremely uncharacteristic for her. So that even though she was UCF's leading scorer with 12 points, Tali Marmon had 9 kills, 3 errors on 26 swings. But, I mean, that's what Penn State does. They just take away your best option, and that's what you get. So and what can you do after that? So Penn State got the victory, 1-2 UCF volleyball, but they have a chance to get something going here as they head to Columbia, South Carolina. They're going to play South Carolina twice and Clemson once. Clemson on Thursday at noon, South Carolina Thursday at 7, and then they play South Carolina again Friday at 7:30. So that should be this is a key weekend for them in a tournament known as the Palmetto Showdown at the Carolina Volleyball Center.
Trying to win the Palmetto State Championship.
Yes. Well, I'll take it. Hey, listen, I think that this is going to be a big spot, especially those 2 matches against South Carolina. They're pretty good. And before you come back home for these last 2 tournaments, I think if UCF can get out of there with maybe 2 out of 3, I think you consider that a big win. And remember, even though the record's not all that great, that RPI is going to start bumping up weekend by weekend with this non-conference schedule.
Well, look, Todd has said this. He said this after the NCAA tournament match back in the spring. He told you this, I think, when we had him on the show. Mm-hmm. They didn't have these matches in the spring, and there's something to be said to be playing these matches to find out what you got, where you're at, what you need to work on, get tested. Take a shot, punch. In the spring, you didn't really have that opportunity in the non-conference, and I think he mentioned that even in the postgame. He felt that was missing from that team. So when High Point punched them, they kind of didn't respond like they should have, probably. Now, to bring up the Penn State, you brought up Penn State and how they took McKenna Melville out and really took her. One of the reasons they did is they have what they did. And I think this is the blueprint. And, look, UCF's going to be fine. They're going to be the favorites of the American and all this. But They remind me right now, and this is why Drew has been hanging out with us, folks, I'm doing this analogy for two reasons. For Drew, in honor of Drew, and in honor of our good friend Tacko Fall, who's now the newest member of your beloved Cleveland Cavaliers. And the reason well, it's funny you bring that up. I think UCF volleyball right now is like the LeBron James Cleveland Cavaliers.
Which version?
I will explain, Drew. You got to be patient. You got to be patient on this. So LeBron James is McKenna Melville. McKenna Melville is LeBron James. She can do anything, everything on the court, just like LeBron. But she needs help. And especially in volleyball here, when you're playing the Penn States of the world, they're going to put their big, tall size on her and basically try to take her out and demand somebody else to beat them. Somebody else to beat them. And dare you to score it. And Todd has been emphasizing this about balanced scoring. You brought it up, Jeff. 50 swings against Georgia Tech is too much because Georgia Tech said we're at some point during that match we're going to try to take McKenna out. We're going to make somebody else beat you. And what happens right now, UCF right now is kind of like the first LeBron Cleveland era, Drew, to answer your question. Remember, what was the big issue? Who was the second guy? Who would be the guy that could step up and support LeBron? Because LeBron's doing everything. He's doing defense. He's doing assists. He's scoring. Well, McKenna's the same thing. She's doing the scoring. She can play defense. She became the 6th or 7th player, depending on your media guide, to have 1,000 kills and 1,000 digs. She could do everything, but she can't do everything alone, especially when you're playing the marquee teams. In this program, these players want to get to the Sweet 16, and to do that, they need to find their Kyrie Irving of this team. Who is the Kyrie Irving of this team who was a person that you could depend on to carry some of the load when all the focus was on LeBron? I think the 2019 volleyball team for UCF had that. Her name was Christina Fisher, Jeff. She was one that you can count on to deliver big points, big kills, kill rallies, take the plate when McKenna was being focused on. Who is that player right now? We don't know. And who is that going to be? Is that player on this roster? We're going to see how the season plays out. But to me, that's the biggest key. If UCF wants to make a big run in the NCAA tournament, who supports McKenna from an offensive standpoint? Because you saw what Penn State did, and I think you're going to see more teams doing this. They're going to, and they are capable of doing this, and that is to put their size on McKenna's side, spy her, and try to take her out of the game and force somebody else to beat them.
Yeah, one of the things that I would like to see, and we saw this a little bit in the St. John's match, is, if it's a good day if they get Anne-Marie Watson on the right side warming up, because she is able to be an offensive weapon. That's going to be a real key where they can go to either side. I think the other thing that I'd love to see is the middles more involved. We saw what UCF was able to do with Narissa Moravec. She's so athletic. When she gets going, I think it's really tough because you can set her in rhythm and quick off of her feet that she's almost impossible to block if she gets the ball in the right spot. And then the other player I think that really has sort of been unsung and I think is really going to develop well as the season goes on is Claudia Dillon, the transfer from Mizzou, is the other middle blocker that's in there.
Had a good start in that Penn State match. I was surprised she wasn't more involved as the match went on. I thought she showed some things early in that match.
Yeah, I think that if she gets going, if Narissa gets going in the middle, like that's going to relieve a lot of the pressure because McKenna, like you said, she's one of those kinds of players who very similar, like you said, to LeBron, is that when she senses any sort of imbalance in the on-floor performance, she just kind of grabs the reins and takes over. And she has and as wonderful as that is to have a player who, as a coaching staff and as fans, you can rely on for that. It's one of those things where you got to have somebody who's like, look, don't worry about it, we're going to be okay, you don't have to take over just yet, let's throw a different look at them and see what they do.
Because it frees her up move now. If you got somebody else you have to worry about. That's why Fisher, I thought, is such an underrated player in 19. you had to account for Fisher. So now you can't just focus on McKenna. And I think that's the key here right now, especially with a spring season, now a fall. You don't want to have McKenna swinging 50, 60 times, especially early. Can you get away with that in conference play? Sure, because in the conference, you don't have the size differences than you do when you play the big programs. You've mentioned this. One of the reasons you said one of the challenges that UCF has from a volleyball program is when you're playing the Penn States of the world, they have trees at the net.
Yes.
It is hard. That's why McKenna's
6'5", 6'6", right across the net.
Right.
And they're athletic too. Like, what are you going to do?
Right, and that affects. That's why McKenna's hitting percentage is low. It's not because she's having. It's because the degree of difficulty is that much harder. The only way to alleviate that is by having scoring coming from somewhere else, because and then make the defense adjust. And I think, to me, that's the key that they got to find. And Todd's been working. He's been saying this since the spring. That's why he wants a balanced offense, because otherwise you become too predictable. And when you get to the postseason, teams will figure you out, especially if you're in the big top programs. That's the difference. And I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think Watson, you mentioned, I think of her, just to continue this analogy, just for Drew's amusement, is Kevin Love, who she does the dirty work. She does the dirty work, doesn't get the credit. You know, the blocks are not, the stats, they don't get excited about it. Like Kevin Love got a lot of rebounds, but people are like, well, why aren't you doing more scoring or this? He does the dirty work. I feel like Watson is that player. She has that ability, but she also does so many things that do not, account for in the stat line. And so it's the thing. So I think she's more of a Kevin Love type, but maybe she could become Kyrie.
I don't think you want to call her Kevin
Love. Don't be hating Kevin Love. Don't do that.
He's made out of glass.
When I mean Kevin Love, I mean championship Kevin Love. I don't mean Kevin Love now. I mean LeBron
Kevin Love who shut down Steph Curry for about 20 seconds when Steph was trying to get that shot off.
That's right.
Blind squirrel finds nut. Details.
Let's not take anything away from Tally Marmon. Really good on the left side in McKenna's stead. But again, in those rotations, she's on the same that McKenna usually is on when she's on that front line, right? She attacks from the left side. So, teams have been, if she presents that threat, that's good, because then you can have McKenna attack from the back.
Correct.
Row, but you kind of have to go pin to pin here. You have to go, you have to find some offense on the right and in the middle to take that pressure off of both Tally and McKenna. So that's why you're playing this schedule. That's why Todd plays it. And that's what was missing in
the spring. In 19, he played a tough schedule. So by the time they played Florida State, they had these answers. I don't think in the spring they had these answers, Jeff, because he was limited on what he could schedule, and they were, quite frankly, not challenged to the degree as far as, man, we got to face, like, these Penn State players, like, there's a reason why these players, they're among the best in the country. They have size. They end up playing. It's difficult. They didn't get to see that in the spring. They'll get to see this, not just this past weekend. They're going to see that moving forward with some of the teams they're going to see. And the plan there is that's going to make this team tougher and better, and it'll pay off in the long run, not only in when you get to conference play, but what you hope is when you get to postseason.
By the way, Georgia Tech, by virtue of that 3-0 weekend that they had at UCF, moved up 8 spots in the poll, AVCA poll, to number 16. Penn State fell 5 spots despite the one loss to Georgia Tech, but they're one spot behind Georgia Tech at 17. The upcoming schedule for UCF this week, we mentioned South Carolina and Clemson. South Carolina comes in. They're actually ranked this week. They're at 24. Clemson is unranked. And I should say, by the way, we talked about St. John's and who they compete with in the Big East, who UCF beat. Marquette, tied for 25th in the top 25 with Washington State. Creighton is the highest ranked team that's receiving votes, not in the top 25. So that shows you who St. John's is going up against in this year. So, this 3 matches is going to come back, I think, to really help UCF out in the long term when we get the RPI all set. So there we go.
Did you like that analogy, Drew? We did that for you and for Tacko. We in honor.
You did that, and that, by the way, we should mention. And Drew will give you this. This is the spotlight. Tacko Fall.
See, segue.
Signed by the Cleveland Cavs. This is what we're going to wrap with here. Thoughts on Tacko coming to the Cavs? Are we going to see him on the floor in Cleveland?
Well, here's the thing with Cleveland. They're not very good.
It's so good.
Well, they're not. They're rebuilding.
For the record, by the way, for those that may not be aware, Drew is a Cleveland sports fan. He's Browns, Indians, Cavaliers. We're not just doing this just for
Guardians.
I'm from Cleveland.
Exactly.
Fact,
so he's the most qualified to address this.
In fact, I just flew back from Cleveland 2 days ago. But that's neither. Well, by the time you hear this, it'll be 3 days ago. It's Monday. But that's neither here nor there. This is a team that needs a lot of work. And one of the benefits for Tacko is the fact that first round pick Evan Mobley is very versatile. They're going to move him around from center to power forward. So as a result, you only really have one true center in Jarrett Allen on this team. So while there's a lot of big guys on the team, Larry Markkinen was just traded for in a very head scratching trade. There's a lot of big men on the team, but there's also opportunity to be able to play and develop. I think the Cleveland fans are going to fall in love with this guy. We know from our time with him, playing in Orlando, you will be very hard pressed to find a cooler, nicer guy than Tacko Fall. And my hope is that he does more than just garbage time, that he finds a way into the back end of the rotation. Because if he can get some meaningful playing time, he can build a niche for himself. But this is probably one of the better teams as far as opportunity. They're not very good. They're going to be very much on an evaluation basis. And it just says something, the fact that they're willing to give him a contract. Now, I would like to point out it's a non-guaranteed contract. Doesn't mean he's guaranteed that money if he doesn't make the team. There's other players that were signed that were in the same place, but they only had 14 guys on roster, so 15. Now they have a full team. So it looks, at least it's promising that he has a real opportunity to find a home.
I hope we see that. I mean, I was pleased when he actually got the playing time that he did in Boston.
It was always garbage time. I mean,
it was, but he was still on that roster. Got some time on that floor. I do think he's been developing his game well. We've seen some of that. We've seen him be a lot more versatile on the floor. I think that's a lot of fun to see. Boston has brought a lot more out of Tacko Fall than I think even maybe a lot of UCF fans might have thought. But again, I want to see him really compete and maybe get the chance. It's just so hard because it's a guards league now. And when you're 7'5", it's
mobility's hard.
Mobility's hard. And he's no longer the kind of player who's really built for the game. 20 years ago, he would have been. So now what do you do to change that? Are you zigging when everyone else is zagging with it? Or do you adjust your game in that respect? And I'd like to see what comes up, how he comes up for the Cavs in that respect.
Now, I do want to point out that the contract's not official yet. They've agreed to the contract, but it hasn't been finalized. So I'm sure that'll be happening in the upcoming days.
Can you hook us up to some Tacko Fall gear?
I was going to say, have you ordered the jersey yet?
Hey, I want to get a authentic Tacko Fall jersey, and it's still a life's goal of mine to somehow get a team issued / game used Charlie Hewlett jersey. Don't know if I ever will, but that's a life goal.
Listen, those of you who don't know, and it might be quite a few of you, Drew is the jersey fiend. I mean, he has them all.
I don't know.
How many do you have exactly?
Are you talking about just UCF ones or in general?
How about both?
UCF ones, if you just count team issued or game used, not including replicas, somewhere around 56, 57, 58 range. If you count replicas, which some are older than others, probably closer to like 70.
My wife.
As far as all together, I have to turn because it's actually in the room I'm in. At least 130, probably more than that. I haven't counted them lately.
Are you gonna do something with them? Like, are you gonna hang them up and display them somewhere?
Well, I mean, they're hanging in a closet. In fact,
that doesn't do anybody any good
before. So it's currently 2 bars that are drilled into the stud because I've broken 2 closets in my time because the jerseys got too heavy.
I got to admit, that's impressive. What's your favorite one out of all of them?
Probably favorite overall jersey, not including the one of my brother's that has our last name on it from back when he played at Beechwood High School in Beechwood, Ohio. Was probably a 93-94 Cleveland Cavaliers Chris Mills jersey, game used. And what's cool about it, it was the last year before they moved to Gund Arena when they still had the old
Richfield Coliseum, right?
Yeah, from the last season in Richfield Coliseum. And when they did the throwbacks, they always did the ones with Cavs on to show to showcase the Cavs, the old Cavs logo with the V at the net. This one's actually blue with the Cleveland spelled out, so it's never been redone, and it's real, it's authentic. I mean, I've got some really cool Cleveland ones. I got a couple of the ones with the old Splash logo when they first moved to Gund Arena. I've got
Terrell Brandon jerseys, right?
I don't have a Terrell Brandon, but from that same generation, I mean, I have like Shawnell Scott because I actually can fit in it. I have like an Antonio Lang. I don't fit in it, but it's one of the 50th anniversary ones. So it has
Antonio
the gold.
Lang. I haven't heard that name.
How many LeBron jerseys you got?
3, I think. I never.
Do you have one that says the land?
No, I never bought one of them. I actually thought they were hideous.
I have one from his rookie. I have one from his rookie year, actually.
I've got one of that style, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
I didn't buy it in 2003.
Okay.
I
also have a Heat LeBron jersey as well.
Now I'm gonna showcase the sickness right here because it's kind of like my addiction. I've tried to collect from every minor league team of the Cleveland Indians and Tampa Bay Rays. So I've got some unique ones: the Lake County Captains, the Columbus Clippers, Montgomery Biscuits.
Oh, jeez.
Let's see, and I've also tried
Montgomery
to collect...
Biscuits. Rest in peace, the Orlando Rays.
Yeah, I actually have the Orlando Rays. I even have some unique ones like the Bradenton Explorers and the Bradenton Juice from leagues that don't exist anymore. Let's see. I've tried to collect one from every Division I school in Florida and Ohio, and I've managed to do it. I've actually also managed to get a few Division IIs in there as well, and 3s.
All right. UWF?
Huh?
Yeah. UWF?
I have West Florida. I have North Florida for the Gulf Coast. I think I have Lynn University.
Wow, Lynn University in Boca, huh?
Yeah, I lived not too far from there from once upon a time. Man, I'm just trying to think off the top.
Well, don't burn all your material. You're going to need some of this material for like the Bethune-Cookman game in the second half.
I have a Bethune-Cookman. I have FAMU, which is my brother-in-law's alma mater.
Okay.
I've got a couple Alabamas because that's my sister's alma mater. I've got Case Western Reserve University because that's my brother's alma mater. John Carroll, the rival to Division III powerhouse Mount Union. Kent State because that's all family schools. Harvard because I used to go there. And then my vast UCF collection.
All right.
Yeah, save some of that material.
Save some of that. We're gonna need a tour of the UCF collection at some point.
Plus, I think that's gonna be a second half conversation in the press box with you and Trace, Kyle Nash, and those and company. You need to save some of that for the second half.
There, you guys can take a look at it in our webcam.
Fantastic. For those of you who are listening on our feed, you weren't able to see it. All right. Yeah, but now you've boxed yourself in, Drew, because now you have to actually tweet out a photo of all that so that we can, share that with the podcast.
Oh, he's not
on
shy.
Our social media account, UCF_Banneret on Twitter, Statboy Drew on Twitter as well, Jeff_Sharon, Eric Elo. Make sure you follow us. We got a lot of stuff coming out the morning of and the afternoon of the game, including our preview and also our predictions, our season predictions as well. For the entire season of UCF football, where each and every one of us on the staff thinks is going to happen with UCF football. And then, of course, Drew, you will be in the press box.
I will be in the press box.
All right. So follow Statboy Drew on Twitter for all the latest on that. Eric, I'm sure you'll be watching the game as well. I will be watching. Of course, I will be quite busy during the game. I will not be tweeting from the game as I usually do. Maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah.
No, I'm not going
to. Are you going to tweet from the game?
I'm doing PA.
I will be tweeting from my house, from the studios. We get set for Night Chef post game. Myself and Jeremy Brenner. I don't know. Jeremy's unpredictable. I don't know what he'll say. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Hopefully, he'll be composed. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, we'll get a good game to talk about.
Jeremy's really good at making people uncomfortable on streams with some of his answers to questions.
Challenge accepted.
But all right, so we will have the stream after the game on Night Shift as well. So make sure you keep an eye on that. And like I said, I can't believe football season's here already. So make sure you follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Black and Gold. Of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com. We are the home of your UCF Knights on SB Nation. We thank all of you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Subscribe. Please leave us a comment or a rating. If you do not subscribe, please do. We are available on Apple Podcasts, and also if you're an Android user, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Yes, Drew, you look like you're going to say something.
Oh no, we were talking about jerseys, and one comment that we made while we were still off the air was my favorite UCF uniform of all time, which I do have one of.
The 03.
The 2003 home unis, by far the best, hands down. And I do have that one with a Mac patch. It was actually a Michael Gaines game used.
82, Michael Gaines, yeah.
I have it. It's one of my favorite ones to wear.
NFL veteran Michael Gaines. We've got that and plenty more to come tomorrow. So make sure you follow us again, UCF_Banneret on Twitter. We will be live tweeting the game as everything happens from there and reacting to it in real time and after the game as well. So that will do it for myself, for Eric Lopez and Drew Glukov. I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We will see you at the Bounce House Thursday night, 7 p.m. kickoff. See you there. Time to bounce.